Welcome back, everyone, to the Jon Krawczynski Show. I am Jon Krawczynski from The Athletic, Timberwolves and NBA writer, and the namesake of the show. We usually have a host here in Jim Souhan. He is on vacation this week, and oftentimes you'll hear me bring in another guest to join me on the shows when Jim is gone. I'm trying something a little different this week. I'm going to go solo this week on free agency, on the draft, on kind of the upcoming prospects for this Timberwolves offseason and what we have seen so far. I have seen Zach Lowe do it. I've seen Bill Simmons do it. Why can't Jon Krawczynski do it on the Jon Krawczynski Show? So I'm looking forward to it. We will dive in to all manner of the Wolves free agency approach, of the outlook of the rest of the Western Conference, of what's happening with the draft picks, of saying goodbye to Nickeil Alexander-Walker, all of those things coming up here on the Jon Krawczynski Show. We are coming to you live from the Aquarius Home Services studios.
Scott for Aquarius. Summer's all about fun, not flickering lights and faulty plumbing. From fixing that runaway toilet and not so hot water heater to installing generators for whole home backup power, Aquarius has your back. Right now, get $98 off any electrical or plumbing repair. Fast, friendly, and ready to rescue your summer from household chaos. Aquarius. Local, trusted, family-owned, and earning the right to be recommended. Schedule today at AquariusHomeservices.com.
Hey, it's Mark Rosen with a reminder to tune into my podcast, Rosen Sports Monday, every week here on Talk North Sports. We cover the gamut from the broadcasting industry to the sports personalities in town. So don't miss it. Rosen Sports Monday here on Talk North Sports.
And we are presented by Giggly Beverages. Okay, so let's get going here, guys, with a busy but not busy start to free agency for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I know that a lot of you out there right now in Timberwolves land, you watch your team go to the Western Conference Finals last year, and then you have kind of seen everything sort of stuck in a little bit of mud. And you're looking at the Houston Rockets bringing in Kevin Durant, Dorian Finney-Smith, really loading up, and primed to kind of make some big splashes and go higher in the Western Conference. You're seeing the Denver Nuggets make some really good moves, bringing in Cam Johnson, Tim Hardaway Jr., Bruce Brown. They've really improved their roster, and it's been really fun, flashy, kind of headline grabbing moves. Even, the Mavericks getting Cooper Flagg. Several other teams in the West have made signings, trades, draft picks with San Antonio, with Dylan Harper, that should improve their rosters dramatically from what they were last season. And meanwhile, what have the Wolves done so far? Well, they've lost Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They've lost Luka Garza. They've lost Josh Minott. They've re-signed Joe Ingles. They have drafted Yohan Beringer. They've drafted Rocco Zikarsky. And that's about it. Now, they also spent $225 million on Naz Reid and Julius Randle. And so they're in much closer to run it back version of the roster than making any of the normally big splashes we're used to seeing Tim Connelly make. Hey, he'll go out and trade for Rudy Gobert. He'll trade Karl Anthony Towns. He'll go up and trade on draft night and get Rob Dillingham. He has been an executive that makes really big moves and grabs a lot of attention during the summer months. And it's been quiet so far in that way. So I understand Wolves fans looking around and saying, wait a minute, all these other teams are getting a lot better and we're kind of standing pat. And what I would say from the inside the team in terms of the logic that is going on with what, with their approach to free agency, they have taken the tone of, first of all, with their salary cap situation, they just have not had the avenues available to them to go out and make splashes in free agency. They were in the second apron last season. They do not have that non-taxpayer mid-level exception to throw around 14 point some million dollars to go out and get a free agent. That is a big weapon for a lot of teams to go out and address free agent needs. And the Wolves just don't have that. That's not available to them. They were also very determined to fall below the second apron for next season. And why would you say that? Well, it's because Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry are cheap and they've just taken over the team and they don't want to spend the money. That's not the case in this situation. This is a new collective bargaining agreement that teams are just really starting to understand all of the machinations behind it, all of the penalties and all of the consequences intended and unintended behind this setup. And so what we have learned now as we go into essentially the second year of this is that the second apron is the hard cap that ownership has wanted forever and ever. Now you can go over that second apron. You can go into it. The Wolves were in it last season. But there are so many roster implications to going over that second apron that for multiple years in a row that it compels teams, unless they are really ready to win a championship, to drop below it and make sure that they can sort of reset the clock on the second apron. So for example, for the Timberwolves, when you are a second apron team, you cannot aggregate players in a trade for salary. So you can't send out two players for one, which means that, hey, if you wanted to trade for Kevin Durant, you couldn't send out multiple players to bring him in until July 6th when they drop below the first apron. And so you also, the longer that you are in the second apron, you run the risk of having your first round draft pick frozen at the bottom of the round. Now that's a huge thing for teams that are contending teams to try and restock their roster with young and cheap talent. And so if you have it frozen at the bottom of the round, you're really stuck in terms of being able to add quality players for a little bit of money and sustain whatever success you have. And so the Timberwolves went into this free agency period and into the draft essentially with the mandate and the goal to get under the second apron so they could reset that clock. And that is why they moved down in the draft from 31, trading back a little bit, try to get a little bit more cushion financially and get a player in Rocco Zikarsky, who is a two-way player who won't count against their main salary cap with their to kind of add in, I would say, the extra money and the extra roster spot that you need. And so they're maneuvering that way. That's why they were so aggressive in signing Julius Randle and Naz Reid back, because if they lost those guys in free agency, they did not have the salary cap slot to fill those same similar types of talent with similar types of money. They couldn't have signed someone on the open market for $30 million a year like they did Julius Randle. They couldn't have signed someone for $25 million a year like Naz Reid. So they were kind of up against it from a financial perspective in terms of why, they had to let Nickeil Alexander-Walker go and why they kind of chose to run it back the way that they are. There is another element, though, to why the Timberwolves are running it back right now. And the belief is that they are very close. They've been into the Western Conference Finals 2 years in a row, and they need some continuity now, building toward another run toward a championship. And so what does that mean? Well, that means that we saw when there was continuity 2 years ago, after the major Rudy Gobert trade, they go into the first round, they lose to Denver. They kind of run it back for the most part in that second year. And what happens? They win 56 games. They go to the Western Conference Finals. They have one of the best defenses that's, historically been in the league in the last 25 years. And so there is a belief internally with the Timberwolves right now that having another year and another summer where they don't have this seismic trade like a Rudy Gobert trade, like a Karl Anthony Towns trade, even like the Mike Conley, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, D'Angelo Russell trade. That was a big trade in the middle of a season, that there's a belief that if they can keep this group largely together, that there can be a chemistry, a cohesion that forms through that familiarity that will be very beneficial for them going into next season. We've talked about it on this show a lot before. Rudy Gobert is a very unique player to learn to play with. And so when you bring in two new guys right before training camp starts, and Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, and you send out one of the players who was most comfortable playing with Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns, it takes more than a couple weeks, a couple of months for those guys to figure out the best ways to utilize Rudy Gobert. When can you trust him? When can you not trust him? How do you work around him defensively? How do you take advantage of his screening offensively? Maybe how can we find him for more lob passes on offense? And it takes a good year of playing with him to figure all of that out and to get comfortable. And so there is a belief internally that you come back next year, you have a full summer working out together. You have a full training camp. Everyone is in place. DiVincenzo's here. Randall is here. Gobert is here. Gobert's spending a bunch of the summer here, from what I understand. He's working out, at the facility, doing things like that, not playing in any kind of international play for the first time in a couple of years, which I think is a great thing for the Timberwolves. And so he can kind of work on getting his body back ready to go. And just working on kind of individual stuff to sharpen his game and get ready for this season. I think that's good. And then finally, they have young guys on their roster that are going to step into those Nickeil Alexander-Walker minutes. It's Terrence Shannon Jr., it's Rob Dillingham, and it's, Jalen Clark, maybe even Leonard Miller at times, who knows? But there are young guys that are going to come in here and be able to, they believe, make an impact. And so as much as this is running it back, there are still going to be some significant differences in the rotation next season. You're going to see a lot more Dillingham. You're going to see a lot more Shannon. You may see more Jalen Clark and Leonard Miller. And so that all kind of gives them the belief that, hey, yes, we have a lot of the similar guys that got wiped out by Oklahoma City in the Western Conference Finals, but there's going to be enough different here to say we can throw a few different pitches now. We're going to have more continuity. We're going to have more chemistry. We're going to have more youth, more energy. And so that's what they're banking on going into this next season. I know it's frustrating for Wolves fans to say, gosh, dang, like the Nuggets are getting Tim Hardaway Jr. and Jonas Valanciunas. What are we getting? The Rockets are going to get Dorian Finney-Smith. What are we getting? That's a real thing to look at. I do think the West is even better than it was last year. So the hill is going to be steeper to climb, but I do think that there is reason to believe that Tim Connolly, Chris Finch are going to be able to do some different things with this roster configuration going into next season to give them some optimism that they can still be very much competing for deep playoff runs. Who knows, if you get lucky, if things go the right way, maybe you even go a step further. They're not going to be the favorites in the West. Absolutely not even close. But if you look at some of the odds makers out there, they're around fourth, around fifth in the league in terms of the chances of going and winning a championship. That's pretty darn good, especially when you think of Timberwolves seasons for 20 years in a row where it's just like they have no chance at all. So I would say don't panic, Timberwolves fans, but I understand your concern. We will see how this all comes together. It's not as exciting. It's not as sexy as going out and making a bunch of trades, making a bunch of free agent acquisitions. But I do think that this is a really good roster with some really intriguing parts on the back end of the rotation that could have good seasons. And so that's my overall overarching thoughts for free agency to start. And we will get more into that as we go forward here. We are going to talk about the draft. We're going to talk a little bit more about Rob Dillingham. We will get into why is Joe Ingles coming back. We'll say goodbye to Nikhil Alexander-Walker and a little bit more. But first, let's listen to Jim Souhan on Giggly beverages.
Well, I want to tell you about Giggly THC beverages. So my wife and I have them frequently, especially on weeknights and work nights. And we use the promo code Giggly North to get a discount on your first order at giggly.com. That's GIGLI.com. Also, they just sent out an email. They're having a lot of fun with this stuff. They also have edibles as well as the drinks. And they put out a list. 5 key effects of THC from edibles and drinks. One is it encourages relaxation. Number 2 is it eases tension. Number 3 is it inspires creativity. Number 4 is it brings on better sleep. And number 5, get your giggle on. Of course, it can improve your mood. My experience, my wife and I, we haven't had the edibles. We've only had the drinks, the teas, the cocktails, the seltzers. What I love, all those things are true. The relaxation, the good sleep. But to me, the best part of all of it is I can have something that tastes like a cocktail. It tastes really good. It gives you that little kick. And I wake up feeling great. I slept well. I don't have a hangover. I don't feel lethargic. I don't have to recover from anything. I get up and I'm ready to roll. My dogs really appreciate that. So Giggly.com, Giggly North is a promo code. Check them out. They're quick trips. They're everywhere. You can pretty much find any kind of beverages. And thank you to Giggly.
And I'll remind you that if you're in the market for a new luxury vehicle, look no further than our good friend Charlie Swanson at Lexus. Whether you're on the west or the east side of the Twin Cities, they've got you covered with 2 great locations, Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. Check out the all-new Lexus TX, a spacious SUV with 3 rows of seating and plenty of room for all your gear. Head over to lexusofwayzata.com or lexusofmaplewood.com for details and to find your next ride today. All right, we're back here now with the Jon Krawczynski Show here on Talk North. And Jim Souhan, again, is on vacation. So I'm flying solo, trying something a little different here. See if you guys like this. See if you get tired of my voice by the end of it. But I want to get now into some of the free agent machinations and why things went the way that they did early on in the free agent period. I will admit, as a beat writer, as someone plugged in and talking to people all the time, one of the things that caught me off guard in the early parts of free agency was that Joe Ingles resigned a 1-year deal. I assumed that Ingles was going to be done, was going to be moving on. Maybe he retires. Maybe he found another team to give him another chance for one more season. But I was looking at kind of the landscape of the West. I was looking at what the decisions the Timberwolves had to make. And I was thinking, Joe Ingles, hey, he was a good soldier last year, great teammate. And it was fun having him around, but, time to move on. Then their first real move is signing Joe Ingles to a minimum contract to bring in to take one of the roster spots again. And you're saying, why did that happen? First of all, $3.6 million for Joe Ingles. It only counts like 2.5 million against the cap because he is a vested veteran. He's been in the league as long as he has. So it is a minimum deal. And I kind of talked to some people about it, figured out, what was the motivation behind it. And here's what it comes down to. This is basically a big time example of how Tim Connolly and Chris Finch like to have rosters constructed going into a long 82 game season plus the playoffs. One of the issues that the Wolves ran into last season was they essentially had too many young players on the roster at the back end of their roster that there was just no room for them to play. We can argue about should Chris Finch have played Shannon more? Should he have played Rob Dillingham more? I think there's reasonable arguments to be had there about that. But when you're talking about Josh Minott, when you're talking about Luka Garza, when you're talking about Leonard Miller, these are guys that have been in the system now for multiple years and just did not have a pathway toward consistent playing time on a team that was expecting to contend in the Western Conference. And so they essentially had some conversations with both Garza and Minott after the season came to a close. And Minott in particular, from what I'm told, said, hey guys, Appreciated the time here. I've enjoyed it, but I need to be able to go somewhere and play. And I need to find something going into year 4 now of, some kind of consistent playing time, or at least a chance to compete for consistent playing time. Can you please, decline my option and let me become a free agent? The Wolves said, you know what, Josh, you've been a good soldier here. Yes, we'll do that for you. We're not going to stand in your way, because with Terrence Shannon Jr., with Jalen Clark, with Jaden McDaniels, with all of their wings, there just was not going to be an opportunity for Josh Minott to get consistent minutes on this team. And so they granted him his release, granted him his free agency, and he signed with the Boston Celtics, who are kind of in this limbo rebuilding mode themselves, and might have a little bit of a pathway for Minott to compete for some minutes there. Same thing with Luka Garza, in terms of they looked at all of the great work that Luka had put in over the last 3 seasons. He busted his butt in practice, killed the G League. And then when he got his limited opportunities filling in for injuries in the front court, acquitted well, had some defensive issues, not really much of a passer, but an NBA level scorer, a good offensive rebounder, and just a really good teammate that people really were rooting for. And so Tim Connolly and the Wolves front office, talked with Mark Bartelstein, Luka Garza's free agent. It's just, hey, if he has an opportunity to get some guaranteed money on a team where there is, again, another pathway toward getting minutes in the front court, we're not going to stand in his way. We're going to do right by Luka Garza. They could have kept him. They could have played hardball with Luka, exercised his option, brought him back to a team where he was stuck behind Julius Randle, Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid, and now Johan Berenger comes in as a first-round pick, and even Zakarski is a second-round pick. There'll be some developmental priorities for him. And the front court is just packed. There's just no real discernible way for Luka Garza to get any kind of consistent minutes unless catastrophe strikes. Rudy gets hurt. Randall gets hurt. A bunch of guys go down. There just was not that pathway. And so they said, Luka, if you can do this, if you can find a better opportunity for yourself, we will let that happen. Go ahead. Luka gets the Boston Celtics again. The Celtics have traded Porzingis. They may lose Al Horford in free agency. There is the potential for real minutes with the Boston Celtics front court for Luka Garza. He goes there, he can be a backup and maybe even play almost on a nightly basis, depending on what happens with some of the rest of the moves that the Celtics do make. And so Garza goes out. And so those are 2 young guys, Minott and Garza, shown flashes of ability. And you're thinking, gosh, why are the Wolves letting these guys go and signing Joe Ingles back? Well, one of the reasons is that it is very realistic and probable that Josh Minott and Luka Garza, back again for 4th seasons in Minnesota, stuck way at the back end of the rotation, would get a little grumbly, would get frustrated, would start to kind of not rock the boat, not be bad influences, but just would not bring the right type of energy that is needed at the back end of the roster there. And with Joe Ingles, he knows where he belongs at this stage of his career. He knows that he's going to be coming to training camp next year, not expecting big minutes, not expecting any minutes really at all, unless there's emergency. But Ingles, if you talk to all the players in the locker room, if you talk to coaches and executives, he's really valued as a veteran who can speak, straight with players who are messing up on the court. He has the respect to be able to give them honest feedback and get into them when they're not doing what they need to be doing. He also is very good at encouraging them when they're down, getting them through some tougher times. He helps lobby and politic the referees during the games. He does all sorts of things, that bring value to the team outside of playing in the games. And for that 14th or 15th spot in the roster, sometimes it's good to have a veteran in that place that just knows the lay of the land and is not going to be one that's grumbling, one that's going to be kind of politicking behind the scenes, that is going to be, rocking the boat, stirring the pot, whatever euphemism you want to use. Joe Ingles is going to come in here with the right perspective and can bring some value there in that spot. And so that's what Tim Connolly and Chris Finch thought about as they brought him back, is that we can put him in that spot and he can still be of value in practices, in the film room, in the locker room for us. And he's not going to raise a stink about not playing. And so it's uninspiring. It's not going to be something that gets everyone excited. And in a perfect world, in a vacuum, you have players in every spot on the roster, 1 through 15, especially 12 through 15, that either can be developed for the future or can help you immediately in case of emergency. And that's just not the reality of the situation for most rosters and most ways they are constructed. Most teams have some kind of little used veteran on the back end there that just is a good soldier and is good for the vibes, is good for the chemistry of the team. It's team building 101. And Tim Connolly is a big, big believer in those types of vibes, in that type of approach with the roster. That's just what he's always thought about. He's always thought that was important. And so in those ways now, listening to people talk about it, figuring out, looking at the dynamics, it doesn't shock me that Joe Ingles is back. I should have actually thought about that more, but at leading into the free agency. So I'm a little disappointed with myself, actually, that I'm that surprised. But this is sports. This is what happens. And the great thing about it is you expect the unexpected, and that was an unexpected thing. But Josh Minot and Luka Garza, goodbye. I think they actually might play in Boston. I think they could help for sure. Garza in the front court. We'll see about Minot. But the Celtics have liked Garza for a long time. I've been told a couple of different times they approached the Wolves over the last couple of years trying to make a trade for Garza, seeing if he was available. Wolves had said no, at those times. Now Garza gets to go to a team that does value him, and we'll see what he can do. And I think he's going to have nights where he might score, 18 points in 14 minutes, and it's going to be fun. And then there are going to be other nights that he might struggle, but a super good guy, put in all of the work, earned everything that he's getting here. And so, I'm happy for Luka Garza. And so, okay, now we'll take a break here at the Jon Krawczynski Show. And we'll come back. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit of Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Rob Dillingham, and a little bit more of what the Timberwolves have in store for this summer. But first, we're going to hear from Jim on TSR injury law.
I want to tell you about TSR Injury Law. You know all about them by now, but you probably don't know them the way we know them. We've gotten to know Steve and some of his partners. We've gotten to know Steve pretty well. We've hung out with him. He's always come over to talk to John during games. He and his partners are fixtures at the games. They love the Timberwolves. They love the local sports scene, and they're good people. And if you're ever injured, they're the people you want helping you. 612 TSR Time. 612 TSR Time. It's a Minnesota company. It's not a company pretending to be a Minnesota company. It's a Minnesota company that started here. They grew here. Now they're a big deal here, and they help a lot of people. They won't charge you unless you win your case, and they win a lot of cases. So just remember, if you ever need their kind of help, 612 TSR Time. 612 TSR Time.
Next up, I'll tell you about Princeton's Liquors. They've been a part of the Jon Krawczynski Show and Talk North now for several years, and they are a community-run liquor store in Maple Grove. They've been around forever and ever. And we at Talk North, we really like partnering with community companies. Bill Princeton has been a part of the basketball community forever and ever. He was an intern with the Timberwolves and Lynx back in the day. And so he knows what you guys are going through, Wolves fans. He's been there. And if you need a little something to take the edge off during free agency, you're a little bit nervous about seeing Houston load up, seeing Denver load up, and seeing Minnesota kind of stay in their place, go to Princeton's Liquors in Maple Grove. They have wonderful bourbon selection, wonderful craft beer selection, but anything you could want, wine, spirits, liquors, whatever you want, it's at Princeton's Liquors in Maple Grove. They will take care of you. They have great selections, high-end, expensive, exotic stuff. They also have stuff that's very affordable, very familiar with everyone around town. So go to Princeton's Liquors in Maple Grove. Tell them the Jon Krawczynski Show sent you. They will not let you down. They will have anything that you need to navigate 4th of July parties, to navigate your nervousness with Wolves free agency and all of the above. Princeton's Liquors in Maple Grove. And now we'll hear from Royal Credit Union.
Soak up sun, sand, and smart saving with a certificate at Royal Credit Union. Royal's 4.40% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate has guaranteed returns at maturity and no minimum opening balance for fast and easy opening. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/savesmart. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 5/27/25. Insured by NCUA.
All right, back here again with the Jon Krawczynski Show, flying solo, no Jim Suhan, he's on vacation, and we're just kind of running through this Timberwolves summer so far, and now we get to the sad part of the show. It's one thing to say goodbye to Luka Garza and Josh Minot, two good guys, worked very hard, talented, didn't get a whole lot of opportunity to play here. It is another thing to say goodbye to Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and he gets a sign and trade to go to Atlanta, 4 years, $62 million to have a real prominent spot on an Atlanta Hawks team that's doing a ton of exciting things in free agency, that is going to enter the Eastern Conference, the wide open Eastern Conference, with a chance to compete there next year. So that all worked out very well for Nickeil. And there are very few players that I've come across that I'm happier to see get the bag than Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And I just still remember I was in Memphis the day after they traded for Nickeil and Mike, and Conley, of course, was the headliner. He comes in, he's the new point guard, D'Angelo Russell out, Mike Conley in, worked with Rudy Gobert, is going to really change the chemistry of that locker room and to take this team forward. And he's done every bit of that. Mike Conley's been amazing. And then there was this guy who was kind of a throw into the trade that we spoke to in the locker room, in Memphis. And I'll never forget it. He's sitting at his locker. He has a book that he's reading, and we come up and we're talking to him about being here, and we're interviewing him about being a part of this team and where he's at. And I asked him a question to start, and he's sitting there and there's a long pause. And I'm just thinking, did I touch a nerve? Did I say something that he didn't like? Is there going to be some kind of snap here or something like that? And it was totally the opposite. Instead, he really thought about it, and he unspooled a very thoughtful, very introspective answer about what he was thinking about coming to Minnesota, about what his career had been like to this point, about trying to find some stability, and about really knowing that he had to really kind of bear down and take responsibility and accountability for making a name for himself in this league, because he had already been traded a couple of times. And there was a sense that he was kind of hanging on to the league by his fingernails at that point. And it just really struck me at how open and honest Nickeil Alexander-Walker was in that answer. And that was the way it was then going forward. Every time we had an interaction with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, just incredibly in touch with his feelings and in touch with the universe around him type of a dude. And it was so refreshing to listen to him talk, to listen to him really not only, he was a former first round pick. He could have been bitter about how things had gone. He hadn't gotten a great shake in New Orleans and Utah. He had had a bunch of different coaches. So there's a lot of excuses that Nickeil Alexander-Walker could have made for why his career had not really taken off by that point. But instead, all he did was work harder and look inward at what he could do differently to make a role for himself. And lo and behold, he just started to really kind of put his hooks into the Timberwolves and become a critical part of everything that they had built over the last 2 years. He really embraces a role as a perimeter defender. I mean, who's ever going to forget, that game 2 in Denver when they are absolutely tearing Jamal Murray apart limb from limb, and he's throwing tantrums and throwing water bottles onto the court and all of those things. And meanwhile, there's the shot of Nickeil smiling as he's lining Murray up defensively. And that's going to be an enduring image to me of Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And just the way that he tailored his game, came into the league thinking he was going to be a big scoring point guard, and instead understood that there was a niche for him to fill defensively, and there was a niche for him to fill as a glue guy. And he just embraced that role to the fullest. So unselfish, so accountable and motivating. And you could tell that he had so many fans within that locker room, within that organization, for how he went about his business. He was always, every player will tell you, I'm the first one in to the gym for practice, I'm the last one out. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was that guy. Like, he was always in early, getting his shots up, going through his routines, understanding the mental part of the game that was so important for him, in believing in himself and establishing those routines and going through them meticulously and using what worked to propel him forward. He was one of my favorite interviews. He was one of just my favorite dudes just to, kind of chop it up with in the locker room, and, not talk about anything on the record, but just exchanging ideas on books, on movies, on culture, on basketball, on teammates, on the world in general. And just an enormously important part of these last 2 runs to the Western Conference Finals for the Wolves. I think that I've seen over the last couple of days now, there are all these edits on TikTok and Twitter and saying goodbye to Nickeil, and fans are really putting in a lot of effort into, showing their emotions and saying thank you to that. And he deserves every bit of what he's getting right now, all of that love. And, I just couldn't be happier for the guy. I'm sorry to see him go, but he deserved it. And part of this collective bargaining agreement, especially for role players, is, the task of the team is to develop them, to improve them, and then to get them to a point where they price themselves out of your team and they go somewhere else. And that's exactly what happened with Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And I'll close with kind of one of my favorite, little interactions with Nickeil. I remember I was in the Timberwolves team store at Target Center before a game one time, and you look at all the jerseys that are for sale. There's Ant, there's Randall, there's Gobert, there's the big stars, there's even Dillingham first round draft pick, those kinds of bigger names, sexier names that are available. But then one of the sections, one of the racks was filled with Nickeil Alexander-Walker jerseys, number 9. And they were right there, and there was a ton of them that were available. And so I took a picture of it because it just really struck me, because how many team stores are you going to go into around the league, and the 7th or 8th guy in the rotation has enough demand for his jersey that the team just stocks it regularly and keeps it there. And that's what it told me, was that there were enough fans that requested Nickeil Alexander-Walker number 9 jerseys from the Timberwolves team store that they said, look, we're not going to just do these individually anymore. We're going to print up a bunch of them, and so that they are there to be sold. So a fan is going to walk in and say, I want a Nickeil Alexander-Walker jersey. Yep, it's right over here. So I took that picture, and there was one point in the season where he was just scuffling a little bit. It was no big deal. Every player goes through it, but you could just tell some of the shots weren't falling, and he was a little bit down. And I went up to him, and I pulled out my phone, and I showed him that picture, and I said, hey, I was in the team store and I saw this. And I just said, Nickeil, do you know what that means? How many 7th or 8th guys on the roster have dozens of their jerseys waiting to be bought in the locker, in the team store? That tells you what the fans think about you. That tells you what your place is on this roster. And he just had such a huge smile on his face and such an appreciation for the love that Wolves fans had shown him and had embraced him with, that it was just a really good bond that he built and earned here with this, with this team, with this community. And so I cannot wait for next season when the Atlanta Hawks come to town and when they put the Nickeil Alexander-Walker tribute video up. He's going to get a standing ovation. He deserves that. He's going to feel that love, and it's going to really soak in with him. He is going to appreciate that. So Wolves fans, just know that as much love as you have for Nickeil Alexander-Walker, that love is reciprocated. He really did appreciate his time here. He loved the reception that he got from you all, and it just really made a big difference in his life and in his career. Like, he saved his career by coming here, and now he's a guy making more than $14 million a year, and he's set up for the rest of his life. So just one of the best development stories in Timberwolves history is Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and just really happy for him. So we are going to go to our final break, and then I will come back with a few closing thoughts here at the Jon Krawczynski Show. And I'm going to tell you right now about Lamb Chops clothing. Go to sglambchops.com for all of the best casual wear: sweaters, sweatshirts, hoodies, t-shirts, shorts, hats. Everything that you could want is at sglambchops.com. It's Lamb Chops clothing. I put in the promo code JONK20 for 20% off anything that you can get at Lamb Chops. I am going to be at the lake for the 4th of July, and I'm going to be wearing their shorts all the time. They are my favorite shorts that I have. These Lamb Chop shorts are super comfortable, super durable. They are ultra high quality, so that you know what you buy with Lamb Chops is going to last forever and ever, but it's also going to be stylish and withstand the test of time. You can wear it out in the North Loop on a Friday night and feel good about it. You can wear them hanging around your home, watching games, and be ultra comfortable with it. sglambchops.com. The promo code is JONK20 for 20% off. And we will answer now a Twitter question for a free giveaway from Lamb Chops. And the Twitter question is from Matt Lundeen, M Lundeen 1212. How realistic is it that Damian Lillard would sign here? And if so, what type of contract would that take? Damian Lillard, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure everyone does know if you're listening to the show, had his contract waived and stretched by the Milwaukee Bucks because they were kind of desperate to build something around Giannis Antetokounmpo to keep him happy in Milwaukee. And so they created that room to sign Miles Turner to a big deal by waiving and stretching Damian Lillard. It was a shocking kind of a move. But it makes Lillard a free agent, and he is going to get his full contract going forward. So he is free to sign for a vet minimum deal. He's free to sign for a very small amount, and can kind of pick his spot where he wants to go. Why did they waive and stretch him? He has a torn Achilles. He's going to miss most, if not all, of this next season, while he's recovering and rehabilitating from that. So for that reason in particular, I don't think it's very realistic that the Wolves would sign Damian Lillard. Number one is that they have guys that they are going to play, but if they're going to use a spot on a point guard, which I believe they would like to add another ball handler, they want someone that can give them some minutes. Should Rob Dillingham get hurt? Should Mike Conley struggle? Whatever it is. And so Damian Lillard just won't be able to do that for most all of the year. The other thing I wonder about with Damian Lillard, it didn't sound like it was the greatest experience for him in Milwaukee. He moved a long ways away from his family in Portland, and the acclimation to Milwaukee was not super smooth. Minneapolis is similar to Milwaukee. Would he want to be here? I mean, he would have a chance to compete for in the Western Conference and to win in the playoffs. But I just don't get the sense that the Wolves would be very high on this list, even if they were interested in him. And I think that with other needs, with the need for guys who can contribute, I just don't think that they're going to go for Damian Lillard. But I answer this question because, Matt, you're one of dozens of people who have asked me about Damian Lillard and the Wolves over the last day or so since this happened. I just am not thinking that it's very realistic at all, and that he will go. Maybe it's Miami, maybe it's Golden State. He's from Oakland, something like that going forward. So I wouldn't hold your breath for Dame time with Ant going forward. You never know, but I think it's very unrealistic at this point. But thanks, Matt, for your question. And thanks to Lamb Chops. Again, promo code JONK20 at sglambchops.com for 20% off everything that they have at that store. And so we will wrap up now, just kind of with a quick big picture thought on where the Wolves stand here right now. And one of the things kind of building off of the Twitter question is, what are they going to do at point guard? They need another point guard. They need another ball handler. This is going to be a disaster with just Mike Conley and Rob Dillingham. And I'm telling you guys that everything that has happened to this point has been a stamp of confidence in Rob Dillingham. When you think about what they did in the draft, drafting Yoann Beringer, a big center at 17, there were a couple of guards that were available right there that they could have taken if they had real doubts about their point guard position. They knew that Nickeil Alexander-Walker was going to be leaving at that point. And so they could have taken Walter Clayton Jr., went the next pick to Utah. They could have taken the Illinois point guard, who went at 20 to Miami. Two smart teams, Utah and Miami, taking these players. You think, okay, like they're highly thought of. I think the Wolves did like both of those guys. They love Beringer, and there'll be more at The Athletic about that in the coming days, about Beringer and about where he fits in and what they think his potential is. But also they did not take a guard there because they believe that Dillingham, who was the 8th overall pick last year, is going to have a chance to make a leap and be ready for a much bigger role in the rotation this season. He did not play much last year. I don't blame Finch for not putting a ton on him as a 19, 20-year-old point guard on a team that needed to win so many games during the regular season just to get out of the play-in. That was high pressure. And so I get why Finch didn't do it, but they are now operating, whereas Finch is not going to have any choice really but to play Dillingham and play Dillingham a lot. I think Dante DiVincenzo could start at point guard. Remember, he was starting at point guard for the 5 games before he got injured in January. They were playing very well. It was going well. And then he came back and came off of the bench. So yeah, you have that option. You have Mike Conley back again, and we'll see kind of what the role is there. I assume that there's going to be a bit of a reduced role, less games, fewer minutes, things of that nature. But ultimately also all of this, even if they were to bring in a Malcolm Brogdon, even if they were to go out and get another veteran point guard to add to the mix, it all is shaping up to stay. They are telling you, we think Rob Dillingham is ready for this. And he does a lot of things that nobody else on the Wolves does. Shot creation. He's really fast. They were, I think, last in transition off opponent misses last year. Our good friend Jake Painting pointed that out on Twitter today. And Dillingham can catch and go. There are going to be elements that he can bring to the team that are absent from almost everyone else. Now, will he turn the ball over a little bit? Yeah. Will he struggle a little bit defensively? Maybe. Where is his shot? We'll see about that and how consistent he can be there. But I just think that when you put all of the pieces of this puzzle together of what they've done with Naz Reid and Julius Randle, letting Nickeil Alexander-Walker go, what they've done in the draft, what they've done with free agency so far in that approach, it all tells us that they believe in Rob Dillingham. Is that right or wrong? We will find out soon enough. But I do think people have kind of forgotten that, hey, this was actually a really highly thought of guy. This, they got up to number 8 to take him. He was kind of viewed at the time as one of the best pure scorers in the draft, electric, kind of quickness, brings a lot to the table that way. And so I don't think that an unimpressive rookie season with some injuries on a team that was just not ready to turn over so much to a rookie point guard should be meaning that you think Rob Dillingham is bust. I don't think so. I think he can really help this team. And clearly Tim Connolly and this front office really believe that as well with the way things have been set up. So keep an eye out. Summer League should be fun watching Rob Dillingham play out there, see how far that he's come in that regard. And he's going to have a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. And I think he wants that. So, that was just my closing thought. Again, thank you for sticking with me through this whole thing. I kind of rambled a little bit, but interested to hear what you guys all think of a solo Jon Krawczynski show here. Thanks to, Aquarius Home Services, to Giggly Beverages, to Lexus of Wayzata and Maplewood, to TSR Injury Law, Princeton's Liquors, Royal Credit Union, and of course to Lamb Chops for supporting the show. Thanks to you all for listening to the show and staying with me. Have a great 4th of July holiday weekend. We will talk to you at some point, probably from Summer League in Las Vegas. I'm Jon Krawczynski from The Athletic. This has been the Jon Krawczynski Show on Talk North from the Aquarius Home Services studios.